Welcome back to the CoDaKrew podcast, a show where we analyze the latest storylines, updates, and drama of the footballing world. After a long off-season of transfers, we are finally 48 hours away from Premier League kickoff, meaning the CoDaKrew's Premier League matchweek predictions are officially back. This year, we've changed up the scoring system. We will still get 1 point for each correct prediction, win, loss, or draw, but instead of multipliers, we will be getting additional points based off of scores. If you get the correct goal differential in a matchup, you get 2 points, and if you get the exact scoreline right, you get 3 points. So, without further ado, will Villa get revenge after last season's controversies? How will the newly promoted teams fare in their first Premier League matchups? And in a clash of the titans between new-look Arsenal and Manchester United sides, who will come out on top?
And where better to start than Anfield, where my boys in red Liverpool kick off their title defense against Bournemouth.
With Liverpool already making several key signings this offseason, such as Wirtz, Ekitike, and Frimpong, and even more potentially on the way, it's clear they intend to win the Premier League again this season and more. But a Community Shield loss to Crystal Palace has caused some to call Slot's new tactics into question. Was it just a false start, or is it a warning sign for what's to come?
Yeah, personally, I don't think it's that big of a deal. We said in our last video, when we were covering the Community Shield, that Crystal Palace is potentially the best team around to challenge Liverpool and its tactics. And I'd like to think we played pretty well against them. Of course, we did lose, which is unfortunate, but we lost on pens, which is kind of luck-based at that point. I'd like to think we did decently well in regular time, in the first half anyway. Things kind of fell away in the second half for us. But yeah, like you said, our summer business has been nothing short of ruthless. We have Wirtz for creativity, Frimpong and Kirkes for width, and a deeper midfield rotation. And we were near perfect at home last season. We only lost one home game out of 19, with that being to Prime Forest at the very start of the season. And we averaged 2.2 goals per game at Anfield. That fortress feel is not just going to go away overnight. And with the way that we've strengthened, I think it's going to be even more imposing this year.
Yeah, I should also say there are even more signings that are potentially on the way for the Liverpool squad. You're still going for Mark Gahey. Alexander Isak could walk through the door any day now. And you're even going for Bradley Barcola. I mean, I don't know how you have this much money, but it is what it is. The one thing I should say, though, is we're recording this as of Tuesday, and it's possible that by the time you're watching this, some of these have already happened. But given that the match is on Friday, it's just 3 days away, even if there are some confirmed transfers, I doubt that they will make it, get the medicals done, all that, to start on the first team by Friday. So I'm assuming that the team that played in the Community Shield is going to be the same starting 11 here. And yes, that also means Gravenberch is going to be gone because he's serving a one-match suspension, I believe, for a red card he got at the end of last season.
Yeah, and I mean, if we go to Bournemouth now as well, I do want to note that they have not scored against Liverpool in our last 3 meetings. It's a 2-0, a 3-0, and a 4-0. And they are now heading to Anfield with a massively weakened backline, as if it couldn't be worse for them. Howson's been long gone. Zabarny just left for PSG, I think, yesterday, as we're recording this. And Kirkes, of course, is going to be meeting the cherries on our side. I could potentially see them scoring here. They did score significantly more goals away last season than at home, surprisingly enough. But it's going to be at the cost of letting in way more. If they can't survive the opening, 20, 25 minutes without conceding, it's going to be a long day for them.
I think there's one potential key to Bournemouth scoring, and that's essentially based off of the defensive mistakes that we've seen from Liverpool in preseason and in that Community Shield match. So because of how you set up, Wirtz loves to push forward, he loves to go to the offensive line. So of those 3 players, that's one player that's pushed up so high, he cannot be in the central position in transition. And then you have Curtis Jones, or Gravenberch when he comes back, either or. Because Liverpool like to push up their fullbacks so much, you only have 2 defenders, and now Curtis Jones has to step back and be in the back line. So there were times in that match against Crystal Palace where Szoboszlai was the only central midfielder, and it cost you dearly. I would argue that that's the reason you conceded both of your goals. But the way Bournemouth lined up is very different than the way Palace will. Now, because of Bournemouth's deep-lying role in the defense, Christie and Tyler Adams are going to have relatively deep starting spots. So in transition, rather than having a numerical advantage, it's probably going to be a 1v1 battle between Kluivert and Szoboszlai, and it's going to be much more manageable as a central situation for Liverpool compared to the match against Palace.
Yeah, like I said earlier, that Palace matchup was pretty perfect for us, and unfortunately, it didn't work out nearly as well as we'd hoped it would. But yeah, I agree with you. Bournemouth's formation is pretty different from Palace's, and I don't think they're going to cause us nearly as many issues. I think during the game, Liverpool were going to be able to dominate possession, kind of what we expected for us to do in the Shield. We're going to have constant overloads down both flanks, especially since we've got Frimpong, Kirkez, both pushing high in order to keep Bournemouth pinned back. And of course, there is an opening that kind of leaves there, but I don't think they'll really be able to take advantage as much. Bournemouth, their best hope is to slow down the tempo. Um, and unfortunately, though, that is easier said than done against a side as drilled as Liverpool is. Given their scoring drought in this matchup, I just don't see them holding it out across 90 minutes.
Yeah, I know that Bournemouth likes to sit back deep, and so even if they try to go for the counter, try to go for the wing attack, 1v1 isolations against Menu and Frimpong and between Tavernier and Kirkis, this won't be as frequent as Bournemouth would like because they're starting off so deep. And I know that in the past, Bournemouth has loved to use overlapping fullbacks to try to build the pressure, but with all due respect, Troyford is no Milos Kirkis. It's going to be a big downgrade in that respect. And as for Liverpool, they're going to get most of the possession in this match, and they just have too much quality for Bournemouth's backline to handle. I mean, again, you've lost Kirkes, Hoytson, Zabarni, and yes, you've brought in Senesi and Hill, but it's gonna take them a while for the new. It's gonna take them a while to click together, even if they do. And so it's just going to be very difficult, I think, to go up against the unrelenting pressure that Liverpool have to offer. And even if they do, even if they have a perfect shape and don't make defensive errors, Crystal Palace didn't make defensive errors in either of the two goals they conceded against Liverpool. With the quality that they have, there's sometimes just nothing you can do.
Yeah, I don't know. When we've made so many additions in the offensive line, and you've got Bournemouth here that has so many outgoings in their back line, things are bound to go poorly. Uh, in that case, I think we can make my final calls, and I'm just going to go ahead and say Liverpool are winning it. I don't think this is too much of a question. My score line is going to be 3-0. I'll have an early Liverpool goal that forces Bournemouth to open up, and after that, things are just kind of going to go awry. They're going to be on the back foot for most of this match. Like I said earlier, we're probably going to dominate possession. And I think our new attacking depth can add two more in order to seal the deal. Bournemouth, they've got scoring threats, but again, with how much their backline is going to struggle, I just don't think their attackers are ever going to get the light of day. I don't see them scoring, unfortunately.
After that disappointment in the Community Shield, I expect Liverpool to be out for blood. With the overwhelming offensive capabilities we know this squad has, I'm expecting lots of goals from Liverpool, and because Bournemouth's setup doesn't make it easy for them to build a numerical advantage in the midfield for quick transitions, I just don't think they'll get a lot of chances to return the favor. The one we haven't talked about yet is that both of Palace's goals were also partially, at least, due to Virgil van Dijk mistakes, and with a player of his caliber, I just doubt that he'll just have a howler like that 2 matches in a row. So I'm going to agree with you and say that in the opener of the 2025-26 season, Liverpool will put on a show and dominate with a 3-0 win.
Yeah, and in that case, we can go on to our next match, which is going to be Aston Villa versus Newcastle at Villa Park.
Newcastle and Villa were 5th and 6th respectively in the Premier League last season, but with both teams facing the threat of losing their star strikers, making the next jump forward into the top 4 is looking like a daunting task. For either team to do so, matches like these against each other feel like must-wins. In this early clash of the eager, who will come out on top?
Yeah, I mean, Villa, they're coming into this one off of a season where they, with Unai Emery, competed at the top end for practically the whole season. And they fell just short at the end. You can definitely argue how much of that is their fault. I think we're in agreement that that was a bad refing decision they had against Man U,
Oh yeah,
and they deserve
absolutely
that
robbed by the
Champions League
rest in
spot
that
over
last match.
Liverpool. Yeah. So it's you can't. I'm not going to give them much blame for how their season ended, but I will say their transfer window has been pretty quiet compared to their rivals. I mean, not quiet, not like with Newcastle. Where they're actually pretty loud, but they just kind of fail to get all of the targets they're looking at. Villa doesn't really have any targets to begin with. We said it earlier in the table video. I was talking about how them missing out on that Champions League spot has really affected their finances, and they can't do much really. So Emery's just kind of got to trust the group that finished strongly last year. Villa Park is still one of the trickier places to go in the league. The crowd and the home rhythm, they definitely suit Emery's team right now, and I think they're going to be banking on that early on in this season.
I mean, to be fair to Villa, I think they got Evan Gesson as a backup striker for 30 million. We were talking about how not having a backup striker after Asensio left, after Rashford left, might be a problem. And so, yeah, of course, that's no marquee signing. That's not in Alexander Isak or anything like that. But I think Villa are once again spending smart. And while it's not the most flashy window, it's definitely better than getting cooked by everybody and possibly losing your star striker to Liverpool. Now, I should say, as of the recording of this video, I think Malik Tia from AC Milan just signed for Newcastle, and he's not probably going to be a starter, but we could see him get some minutes against Villa in this opening match, depending on how Bartman and Fabian Schär play in that backline.
Interesting. And speaking of Newcastle, like I said, they had a transfer window that was full of noise, but unfortunately not a lot of tidy business. Alang is a decent addition, to be fair, actually a pretty good addition, I should say. But they have missed out on several targets, and there is, of course, ongoing uncertainty about their striking plans. Isak is very clear that he does not want to play for them, even if they don't let him leave. And we've already seen them struggle to score versus Villa before, like that 4-1 last season. And of course, Isak has done so much for them in terms of scoring last season. So if it turns out he is, well, he's probably not going to be playing at his full potential, but if, say, he's not even on the pitch at all, that's going to be certainly a real issue for them. This morning,
I think Isak confirmed that he will not play another match for Newcastle, whether or not they sell him.
Yeah, he does official. Not.
No more Alexander Isak starting. They're going to have to instead play a Logan Paul lookalike as their striker.
Dude, I mean, they kicked him out of the barbecue, man. I don't know what you expected. That's just like, that's so low. I'm sorry. At least Newcastle had one, though. I'm pretty sure Man U canceled theirs.
Yo, why is Man U catching strays, bro? What are we... Oh, my God.
I don't know.
Man U can sign Šeško, man. I don't... Come on.
That's fair. Man U gets their targets. They get their transfers. Though it obviously wasn't a direct match, there is very real bad blood from that Champions League drama at the end of last season. Villa will want revenge for missing out on the UCL, so this fixture has got a real edge to it beyond the 3 points. And I know people are going to talk about that Man U Arsenal game as probably the big highlight of this match week. I think if there was any match that was in second for how big the teams are and also the bad blood, it would have to be this one for me.
Yeah, I mean... Okay, obviously we're recording the video right now. My assumption is the title is probably going to be about United and Arsenal, but if that match week was not this week, I think this would be a very solid title, a very solid thumbnail for us to use in and of itself. So this is going to be a fun match, and I'm just going to go straight in and talk about the tactics, starting with Aston Villa. The midfield battle is going to be absolutely crazy. So we have Tielemans, Kamara, and McGinn. They're all solid distributors, they're all strong on the ball. And with Joelinton as the more offensive midfielder for Newcastle, they're going to be reliant on two very solid defensive midfielders in Sandro Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes to read passing lanes and start off in transitions. But because it's such an evenly matched duel, both teams are going to probably try to force the initiative, and because it's going to be very difficult for one team to make sense of that absolute chaos that's going to be going on in the central midfield, I think it's going to be a match that's won on the wings. In Villa's case, they love to push up Lucas Digne to overlap with Morgan Rogers and put pressure on the left. And while Newcastle is going to do the same thing with Harvey Barnes and Livramento, Harvey Barnes, by the way, starting instead of Gordon, because like I said before, Gordon has to play striker, I trust Digne's direct offensive creativity and playmaking a lot more than what Livramento has to offer. And we also think that Morgan Rogers is probably a better player than Harvey Barnes.
Okay. Yeah, I think... personally, I think tactically this match is going to be all about tempo. Who can impose their preferred speed on this game? Villa, I think the midfielders will be a big focus for them. They'll want to create overloads in the middle there, using players like McGinn to try and draw out Newcastle's press. Watkins also thrives when Villa can turn these build-up phases into like some early crosses or diagonal balls into his runs. So they are going to want to play pretty quickly. They're going to get the ball and they're going to try and push that up quick, get all their players up there. Newcastle, on the other hand, I think they'll want to make it a transition-heavy game. you have like Guimaraes linking with Tonali, Joe Linton to try and break through Villa's press. Really, I think they'll both be trying to play pretty quickly, to be honest. I think we can expect the shots on target to be pretty high here. I won't say how many goals there are going to be, but there'll certainly be a lot of shots taken. I guess the question for Newcastle is whether can that forward line, which probably is pretty unsettled by the Isak situation, can it be clinical in those few big chances, especially if he isn't around to guide them?
Yeah, without a striker, period, on that lineup, it's going to be a big question mark as to how they convert chances and how they create them in the first place. Now, what I've seen from Newcastle in friendlies so far is that because Anthony Gordon would obviously much rather play in a wing position, the other wingers, so Harvey Barnes and Anthony Alanga, they tend to be a bit more central because that way it gives space for Anthony Gordon to basically drift however he wants and try to create opportunities the way that he would have last season. So what that's going to mean is that Newcastle are going to focus rather than going through the wings the way that Villa will, probably for the center, trying to overload there and therefore finding chances to Anthony Gordon. And I think that's probably a good strategy. But the issue is Villa again have a very solid midfield of their own. They've got, I mean, I don't know if they're going to play Kamara or Onana, and they have Tielemans. It's going to be very difficult to break that down. And even if they do, I mean, they have a solid backline as well. So that's not to say Newcastle won't have chances. I agree with you, they'll have a lot of shots on target. But one question is just how well their tactical system matches up with what Villa has to offer. And the other question, of course, is again, without number 9, how clinical can they be?
Yeah, fair enough. I think with this game, it's got all the makings of a back and forth, like I said earlier, high intensity opener. Tactical control will really matter. Villa, they're going to push to make it a territory game. Again, Emery, he's going to want his midfield to control that rhythm. And if Watkins can get good service from the flanks, Villa will be able to convert those half chances. Newcastle, they've got their midfield engine, Bruno, Tonali, Joe Linton, and that gives them a real counter threat. But again, I have to go back to it. Just with all that transfer tension, I know I keep bringing it up. I think the front line is going to struggle to even get started if Isak's not around for this game. I think that and Villa's home rhythm are the decisive factors here. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to go too well for Newcastle.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same wavelength as you, to be honest, once again. From the high-level stats, I agree that Villa and Newcastle is going to be a very even game. But again, with that slight left-side advantage that Villa will try to exploit with Digne and Rodgers, and with Newcastle's potential to waste chances with Isak out of the lineup, I'm predicting a Watkins-led Villa side to be just that extra bit more clinical and pull off a 2-1 win at home.
Okay, fair enough. And I think, did I have the same scoreline as you on the last one? Because yeah, I think I might have the same thing here as well. So Villa, I have getting the early goal. Newcastle, they're going to get an equalizer, maybe somewhere around halftime, a little bit before, a little bit after. But Villa will nick it again late. Maybe a late transition is going to get them through. And Newcastle's attack, I just don't think they're going to have a response to it. So my final call is also going to be Villa 2-1 Newcastle. And we're really going to have to hope our predictions separate a bit, because otherwise this could be a very boring video.
You know, I thought with the value that the scorelines added, there would be no way we'd have to worry about each other, because we would surely not have the same scorelines, even if we had the same winners. But I'm a little less sure about that now. I'm not gonna lie.
Don't worry, guys. It'll get better. I'm sure. Okay.
Of course.
Well, same scoreline for the first two. Let's hope it's a bit better for this third match. We've got Tottenham hosting Burnley in North London at the Hotspur Stadium.
After an ambivalent season that saw Tottenham both have an abysmal Premier League showing and a Europa League triumph, Spurs sacked Ange Postecoglou for the pragmatic and Premier League experienced Thomas Frank. On paper, he could not have asked for a better start, with his first Premier League match being at home against a relegation side. But with key injuries including Madison, Kulusevski, Solanke, and Udogie continuing to plague the club, circumstances call into question whether Frank can hold the line, or if Spurs will crumble under the pressure.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. As Spurs, not only are they coming into this season still figuring out life after Ange, but also life after Son and Kane, who we've been talking about earlier, are great talisman for them. The creative core is still there with the squad with Madison and Kulu, though I'm fairly certain they're still off for this match, so that's a bit questionable for them. Defensively, they definitely have tightened up a lot with the pace of Mickey Van de Ven alongside a more disciplined Christian Romero. The question now is who finishes their chances, especially with these next few matches where, again, like their creative leaders, Madison and Kulu, are probably going to be off for quite a little while. Richarlison's form comes and goes, and while Scarlett and Valise are promising, they're not ready to be week in, week out starters. So I guess that just leaves Johnson. And while he obviously did great for Spurs last season, they could have some trouble with him there on his own.
Yeah, that's going to be a big question mark. And there's some more big question marks as well. Obviously, Kulu and Madison will not be ready for this match. But whether Udogie and Solanke will be back will be a big difference. If Solanke's back in there, that is a key offensive piece that Tottenham can have to convert chances. But there's another problem. The day that this video comes out, Tottenham will be playing against PSG in the UEFA Super Cup. How much will they focus on that match compared to this one against a newly promoted relegation-bound Burnley, right? If Spurs take that opener seriously, they might rotate here, and it might be even harder for them to pick up the 3 points.
Yeah, we're just gonna have to see how Tottenham fares here. It's kind of hard to say. We don't have as much info on them. Maybe we could have waited a little bit to release this video, but we like to send our stuff out early. So we'll just have to see how things go for them with tomorrow's match. I know we didn't give them a great chance of winning, but if they manage something against PSG, it could fare pretty well for their first few
I
matches.
probably said in that video that there's a good chance of one upset happening, and one upset did happen, which means
which was Palace. So I guess
yeah,
I guess
not too good.
Sorry, Spurs. Palace took your upset. I'm so sorry. Okay, we have Burnley as well. They are arriving off the back of a brilliant championship season, 100 points, and somehow still only second place. But the Prem is a different beast. I mean, we saw how much Sunderland spent, right? Something like 140, 150 million pounds. Burnley have spent quite a bit as well. They've kept much of the core intact, but they've added lots of defensive reinforcements like Chauna, Hartman. But up top, like I've said before in our table video, they still lack a proven top flight scorer in his prime. Barnes is getting old. Amdouni is returning from a good year in Portugal, but he's still untested at this kind of level. And the amazing Trafford's departure is going to leave Burnley and their new keeper, I think Weiss, with big gloves to fill. Burnley's back line posted nearly 30 clean sheets last season. Holding that kind of record in the Prem would be unrealistic even with Trafford, but with him gone, it's not going to be any better now.
Brother, it would be unrealistic of any team. That's happened one time in history, and it was with prime Jose Mourinho. That's not happening.
I mean, I think we both had him going down, right? So
we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's not looking too good. I mean, to be fair, they do need a striker talisman, and there's a chance that Armando Broja will do that for them. Although I don't think he will. To be perfectly honest, and I also just don't think that the way Burnley played last season fits very well for a not Champions League, but for a Premier League fixture where they have to be a lot more pragmatic and defensive. Part of that as well is James Trafford. I think Burnley conceded 16 goals, like you said, but the XG on target that they conceded was something like 28 or 29. So that's nearly half of their goal count being halved, their goals conceded being halved just because of their goalkeeper in James Trafford alone. Now that he's gone, that's going to be a massive loss for them. Now, looking at average possession, they averaged 56% in the championship last season, and I think to go from that into playing the counter system, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Just for a little comparison, we'll talk about Sunderland more later, but I think the best counter-attacking team of the newly promoted ones are Sunderland. And they actually averaged less than half average possession last year, despite being promoted. So I think there was a clear difference there, especially because you look at Burnley's front three, they're not very pacey. Whereas Sunderland, they have Talby, Simon Adingra. This is the big difference in the type of personnel that these two teams are bringing here. The best bet I think for Burnley is to just try to break through the midfield and get some long balls into a striking position. But I think that even if Tottenham rest players, as long as they have people like Polinia, like Bentancur, like Bergvall, like again, maybe they rest Bentancur and play Bergvall. I don't know. I think even in that situation, it's going to be very, very tough for Burnley to get balls into the front three. And again, even if they do, they don't have a clinical finisher that can get you a guaranteed goal off of one or two chances.
Yeah, Burnley, they've got a lot to get used to when it comes to tactics. And I'm not sure, like you said, I don't know that they quite have the personnel for the tactics they're going to need to use this season. I mean, I think they're kind of like typecasted at this point. No, there's kind of a strategy they have to go for here. They're going to sit deep. They're going to try to keep the game slow, kick up those long balls, spring forward when Spurs commit numbers. I think it's their chances are just going to hinge on whether Spurs' midfield can switch play quickly enough in order to pull them out of shape. And if Spurs aren't quick enough, then maybe they get some chances. But unfortunately, I don't know that it's up to Burnley at this point.
I mean, with that very deep backline that Thomas Frank is employing, the 4-4-2, it's going to be very difficult to try to get counters up against that. But as for Tottenham, I think they have a much better situation if they want to try to break through Burnley in the midfield. Obviously, the midfield three that Burnley are going to go with is Josh Cullen, Mejbri, and Ogochukwu. And it's mostly going to be on Josh Cullen to try to be the number 8 and defend and be basically an anchor for Burnley's defense whenever Tottenham have the ball. And unless he pulls off a generational performance, I just cannot see how him by himself is going to be able to deal with the long balls of Polinia and Bentancur, the link-up play between Sarr and the wingers. It's going to be way too much of an ask, and there's just like simply no way that he can possibly deal with that. And again, even if Tottenham doesn't play their best midfielders, due to the Super Cup, you put on like Bergvall there, he's gonna cook, right? Like there's just too many options here, and I just don't think that this Burnley team is well equipped for that. And even then, when you overload the midfield like that, because it's very possible we'll see, if Mateus Tello starts rather than Brennan Johnson, for example, he might want to drop back, Richarlison might want to drop back, and they're going to try to get players into dangerous 1v1 situations. Kudus in particular is going to be the best example of this. I talked about him in the Super Cup video, by the way, but I think he could potentially cook for them once again. If Tottenham are capable of overlaying the midfield and therefore getting passes in behind, the Kudus setting up 1v1s between him and Hartman, with all due respect to the Burnley left back, I am choosing Kudus 100% of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Tottenham are going to take the Super Cup seriously and they'll put up their best 11 for that to maximize their chance of winning another trophy, because I'm sure they're hungry for more silverware. But their roster's just so deep when you look at a Big Six club versus a newly promoted team. No matter how much purchasing the newly promoted team does during the window, like it's just not going to stack up. Tottenham's second team has more than enough depth to face Burnley's first team head on. The Spurs, they're going to lean on Frank's Brentford blueprint. They have that patient ball progression through midfield, calculated pressure, and the fullbacks are going to provide much of that attacking width, while you'll have Johnson as well, who's going to look to exploit those spaces between Burnley's fullbacks and their center backs. And I don't know, Burnley's roster is just not fit to play Tottenham. I'm sorry to say. The gap between the Prem and the Championship, we've talked about it a couple times, has just gotten so much bigger. It's just not going to work out for them. I'm sure they can find their wins during the season. I don't think this is going to be one of them.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. Like you were saying, Brennan Johnson was so good at making back post cuts and cleanup balls in behind last season. I think Tell will probably be the starter for the Super Cup, and therefore I'm expecting Johnson to play here. And I think, with the 1v1 opportunities at Kudus, or even Pedro Porro, who very progressive right back on its own, if they can create 1-on-1 opportunities and distract the Burnley defensive line, that could be a big issue. Kyle Walker is going to be the one that's trying to mark Brennan Johnson. I'm not going to lie, he's a bit past his prime.
Yeah, so Burnley, they are going to come here to frustrate. That's kind of their plan. They sit deep, keep their shape, hope to counter, but I don't think they're going to find many openings. And over 90 minutes, Spurs' better transitions are going to start to wear Burnley down. I wouldn't be shocked if it takes until after halftime for a breakthrough, but I think Spurs are going to get it and they will see the game out professionally. And I'm going to give them a 2-0 win for this match.
All right. I think, once again, Burnley are going to really struggle to create chances against a Spurs squad with a superior midfield, and I just don't see them scoring either. Even though Tottenham's still dealing with several injuries, even though they're going to rotate players because of that UEFA Super Cup, I think with the brilliance of some guys on that team, like the Johnsons, like the Sars, like the Kuduses, Tottenham will be able to just barely squeeze a 1-0 win out of this fixture.
Okay. If
There we go.
different
That's
scores, that's
a
nice.
difference right there.
That's nice. Okay,
Exactly.
so if Tottenham wins, we each get the 1 point, but I guess we'll have to see who gets the second.
Right. Or the
Or,
third.
or the third, that's true. Maybe one of us gets it exact. With that said, next up we have Brighton versus Fulham at the Amex, the American Express Stadium.
Brighton and Fulham were two clubs that have consistently been able to finish mid-table over the past few years. But with Brighton having already made key signings like Kostulas, De Kuiper, and Boscagli, Fulham's transfer window so far remains dead silent in comparison. Does Marco Silva know what he's doing, or are the Cottagers headed for trouble?
Yeah, I think in that table video, I compared Fulham to West Ham, where I was like, both of these teams are kind of just drifting. The difference is West Ham is drifting slowly toward relegation, and Fulham is kind of just like going in a circle around the mid table. Like, they'll be two, three places is kind of the range they go through. But I think they've just become one of the league's most consistent middle third sides. Like, they're not really in danger of going down, but they have not found that extra gear in order to break into the top half. Jimenez and Muniz can produce in bursts, but not week in, week out. Defensively, they're pretty well organized, but I think that center back pairing could be exposed if they have to defend for long stretches, which will almost certainly be the case here because I expect Brighton to be decently dominant with the possession in this game. And I guess Fulham will be kind of looking for, like a lot of these other teams here, they're looking for a transition goal if they can kind of find a gap in Brighton's line. But again, I think it'll be pretty hard to find one because Brighton have been pretty consistently good in the last season.
Yeah, a few things before I get into the analysis here. I know Carlos Baleba made a kind of knock in training a few weeks ago, and I also know that he's being linked to Manchester United right now. But my assumption is that he's going to be match fit and still in the club by Saturday. But as for Fulham, Anthony Robinson will not be back from injury in time for his first game. He was one of the top assisters in the Premier League last year. He is a big source of creativity for this Fulham squad, and that's going to be a big loss in their build-up play. Now, on the offense, it's Matt Zweifer who is the right back for Brighton, and this season, it seems like, at least based on the preseason friendlies, that they're going to want to push him up, and they're going to also want to push up Matt O'Reilly to be on the same line as Jorginho Rudder. The Seagulls are going to overload central areas, and with the hold-up and distribution abilities of some of those key anchors, such as a Jack Hanshelwood, such as a Baleba, such as a Rudder, I think Fulham's midfield is going to struggle to keep up, especially now that, based on at least the friendlies, once again, it seems like Emil Smith-Rowe is out of the starting 11. Now, if Sessegnon or Kenny Tete try to play more narrowly, they try to push up to help in central spaces to deal with the overload, the numerical advantage that Brighton have, well, Brighton also have two very strong wingers in Matoma and Minte to make runs in behind.
Yeah, I don't know. Brighton, they're coming into this season looking pretty stable after the turbulence of last year. Joao Pedro's move to Chelsea is definitely a loss, but Brighton tend to plan well for exits like these. I mean, they're known as a transfer club, right? They bring talent in, help train them, and sell them off for big money. And they know how to deal with this. I mean, you have Matoma who's back fit. They've added Brian Gruda. And you have that back line with Igor and Van Heck, which looks pretty settled. And as much as I'm sure they like Europe in the calendar, there's a freshness about them without having to deal with that. They finished last season pretty strong. They've done pretty well in the preseason matches as well. And so I think they'll be confident in their creativity and especially their control of the game coming into this match.
Yeah, I mean, talk about, like, losing Joao Pedro. Guess what? Jorginho Rutter is pushing you up from midfield to the offense. If you're not good, Danny Welbeck is 47 years old, but he's still in his prime, apparently. And then even then, we've brought in not one, but two Greek youngsters that nobody's ever heard of, but now that they're on Brighton are probably going to be, like, world-class in 2 years. It feels like Brighton have a solution to every possible problem one could have in the transfer market. As for Fulham, though, their best bet, I think, on the ball is just to forego to midfield entirely. Again, Henshawood, Baleba, O'Reilly, Rudder. It's just there's no way Fulham are going to be able to handle that. And the lucky thing for them is that their defensive midfielders, Sasha Lukic and Sander Berge, are very good at hoofing the ball up and making long balls. I think Sander Berge was like had the second highest long ball completion rate out of anybody in the top 5 leagues in Europe. The only person ahead of him was Vitinha. So based on that, they're going to hoof the ball up. They're going to bring it to the front three. And with Raul Jimenez up there as a strong hold-up-play builder, I think if Fulham want to pull up an upset, Jimenez is the key to the game. He can also make passes in behind to the other wingers. But if he is able to just make that anchor, be the guy in there that becomes the focal point, Fulham might not necessarily need a lot of chances to take counter opportunities and turn them into goals.
Yeah, no, like you said, Brighton's midfield very, very strong. And I think Fulham, they're probably going to have a bit of a mid block here. They'll sit somewhere between their edge, the edge of their own third, and the halfway line. They don't want to get dragged into Brighton's team. They really don't want to take those fights in the midfield, I feel like. When they can get Brighton stretched, they'll probably aim to commit some runners from the midfield, especially someone like Pereira, to link with the striker, create some quick overloads before Brighton can recover. But they really do have to take advantage of those opportunities because, like I said before, I don't think they're going to get too many of them. His set pieces are another route into a goal. I think Silva's teams are usually well drilled on corners, free kicks, which could be one of the few ways to unsettle Brighton's defense without needing prolonged possession. And I think Fulham, they're not going to want to sit on the ball too long. They're going to want to grab that up, run it up the pitch quickly, and just see what they can do on the other end.
Yeah, overall, I think Brighton are going to have the lion's share of the possession. They're going to be the ones that are controlling the game, controlling the midfield. I would even argue that they probably have the better wingers and wingbacks as well, especially someone like a Matt Swifer who is happy to push up the pitch and give support to Minte if he needs it. Comparatively, like we're saying, Fulham are probably going to forgo that midfield. Maybe if they do end up playing Smith Rowe instead of Pereira, okay, maybe then you'll be a little bit more pragmatic and be able to try to like build link-up plays with the wingers and whatnot. But it seems like based on preseason that that's not going to be the way they set up. And if it's just that, and it's just like Iwobi, Wilson, Jimenez as the front line, I mean, it really feels like without Jimenez's anchor, without him being just like that guy for them, whether or not he scores, whether or not he directly like makes a goal contribution, it feels like this team is just so dependent on him. At least for this matchup, tactically speaking, if they want to get even any shroud of a hope of scoring a goal against Brighton.
Yeah, this has the feel of a game that Brighton is going to control for sure. I mean, like they'll have their fullbacks high and wide. Their midfielders will be constantly rotating. Uh, Gruda could be key in breaking Fulham's shape with some line breaking passes. And yeah, it's just like they're gonna have possession for most of this game, and I think most of the chances will be theirs to take. And their biggest task would probably be converting pressure into goals without Joao Pedro, something they struggled with last year. But they'll just need to be patient, and I think with time in those 90 minutes, they'll score as many times as they need to. I don't think maybe Fulham get a goal. I don't have them scoring one. I'm just gonna say Brighton. They get most of the chances, and they end up with a 2-0 win here.
Yeah, I think this is probably like a stereotypical mid-table battle. And, with the offensive pieces that these squads have, I do expect both to probably score, even though you may not. Brighton's going to dominate. They're going to dominate the possession. They're going to get most of the chances. And I agree with you. They're going to have enough goals to win this game. But man, Raul Jimenez has given me scars just one too many times at this point. I do not want to bet against him anymore. I don't care what the statistics say. So I'm going to say Fulham are able to get one goal back, and Brighton are going to end up with a 2-1 victory.
Okay. Yeah, that works for me. Not unreasonable. And here's an interesting matchup we have. A team with a stable Prem presence for the last decade or so in West Ham, and one that's been itching to get back into the top flight with Sunderland.
Yeah, with the trend of the past few Premier League seasons, history just does not look good for the Black Cats. But to be fair, they've made some solid signings, including Granit Xhaka, and I have seen a lot of pundits and other YouTubers online be a lot more bullish on this club than we are personally. Now, for me, I think there is a lot of question marks because while they were the weakest team coming into the transfer window, they probably had the best transfer window of the three promoted sides. So it's kind of hard to tell just how well they're going to do relative to the other teams coming up from the championship. I think this match, though, is a key indicator in Sunderland's survival odds. They're at home. They're playing against an established lower mid-table side, and if they are to avoid relegation, this is like the stereotypical must-win game.
Yeah. Sunderland, their long awaited Premier League return is going to kick off in front of a raucous home crowd. And we've had a very busy summer. Regis Labrie has dropped around 130, 140 million pounds. He's brought in a wide mix of players we've got here. Shaka, Adingra, Diarra, Reynildo. It is a smart mix of leadership and youthful legs, but like you said, chemistry is the unknown. And just with how many transfers they've had, it's kind of hard to predict how things will go. Preseason form hasn't exactly set the pulses racing, and it doesn't help that Sunderland have not beaten West Ham since the start of 2013. Their last 8 league matches have been draws or losses, and the last 3 meetings at this ground at the Stadium of Light all ended level. It's an interesting record, but again, there are just so many new players. It's been like almost a decade, if not a decade now, for Sunderland. We're just going to have to see how things go. It'll be a very interesting matchup to watch for sure.
I think also part of what makes this a bit difficult to predict is that since these two teams played their last friendlies, they've actually gotten some more players in. I think I've talked in the past about how Alphonse Areola, I think, is one of the weaker goalkeepers in the Premier League. He was very error prone last season. And West Ham very recently signed from my club, Leicester City, Mads Herdmanson. Personally, I might be biased, but I think he is a much better goalkeeper, and I think that if they're smart about it, they will start him instead. Similar situation for Sunderland. I think Mark Guehi, signed from Chelsea as a striker, is a clear improvement, and I imagine he will start as well. Now, what's interesting about this match is that West Ham, I think, averaged something like 49 or 48% possession in the Premier League last season, which is a pretty high amount for a lower mid-table side. So if that is any trend, they're going to get most of the possession in this match, with Sunderland happy to sit back and just try to play through counters. West Ham will focus its attack centrally with its wingers are putting quotation marks, in Lucas Paqueta and Jared Bowen. And I say that because I feel like they're both more central players than wingers, at least in the traditional sense. Uh, there will be overlap on the wings with the wingbacks to try to compensate for this. Because of this, it's probably going to be overloading the midfield, just like many other mid-table teams do, by the way. You have Ward-Prowse, you have Susek to provide passes in behind, and it's going to be Aaron Wan-Bissaka on the right wing in particular, who I think is going to be the biggest threat to the right side for Sunderland to deal with.
Yeah, but I mean, West Ham, as I've said before, they just feel like a club without a clear direction. I mean, Kudus is gone, Paqueta's future is uncertain, and while Bowen can definitely still be a strong scoring threat, the arrival of Callum Wilson it's an interesting transfer, but it's definitely a gamble given his injury history. Defensively, I think they've regressed a bit over the past couple of seasons, just stats wise. And that said, though, like I said, they're unbeaten in this fixture since the 13-14 season. And from what I've looked at, the bookies have them just edging the odds at a 5-4. Though that feels more about Sunderland's untested squad to me than West Ham's strengths. Again, like you said, there have been transfers since both of these last teams played their friendlies. So I'm a bit iffy on this match, to be honest, but this is one that I will definitely tune in for if I can, because it'll say a lot about the outlook of these two teams.
I mean, yeah, okay. You're watching this over Brighton Fulham? Same time, I'm just saying.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, that's a fair
Yeah,
point. I'll have to
yeah,
pick.
that's what I
Hey,
thought.
who
That's
who
what I
who
thought.
said I can't watch both at once?
Simulcast? Fair enough. I can't do that. My computer won't handle it, but yeah, I guess. Sure. Um, Anyways, Sunderland are going to obviously rely on pace, to break down West Ham's defense. I said in an earlier segment that Sunderland are the best counter-attacking team of anybody coming up from the Championship. And you know who's going to be the key to those? That's going to be Simon Adingra, one of the fastest players in the Premier League this season, and Talby, who himself is quite a speedster. Now, if they can catch West Ham's wingbacks off guard, which I'm going to be honest seems pretty likely given how high up they tend to go on the offense, that combined with Shaka's very good long ball and chip passing ability, I think he's something like 70%, averaging like 6 or 7 of those a match for Bayer Leverkusen combined. While Wan-Bissaka sure is a solid defender, I think Adingra might actually be able to beat him on the 1v1. Same thing. Talby will get opportunities back from Xhaka, and I think they'll just be able to create chances on the counter in transition against, like you were saying before, this West Ham side, which I think has really lost its identity in recent years. There is still a Declan Rice sized hole in that midfield, and I fully expect Sunderland to try to take advantage of that. So that's the thing, and then also like, oh, I almost forgot to mention this. It was Trey Hume, 3 goals, 6 assists. I got those two numbers mixed up in our front prediction video. He could also push up, and him combined with Talby against Diof's questionable defending ability, that could be a mismatch in Sunderland's favor.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, no, Sunderland, they'll probably have Shaka anchoring as the deep controller. Obviously, he's got lots of leadership experience. He is going to drop between the center backs as he's building from the back. He's going to want to hit Adingra early on the left or Talby on the right. Or, of course, you've got Marquis right in the front. They're going to want to press and burst Sunderland. Rather than sustain high pressure, they're going to want to find their openings and then move quickly. And they will be relying on those quick transitions when West Ham lose the ball. The fullbacks could be a bit more aggressive at home, but given that West Ham has some decent counter threats, expect them definitely to pick their moments rather than bomb forward all game. But I do think with these additions, like you said, some very pacey players, and also having Shaka there to lead the team, they will be very threatening for sure. And I could see them getting quite a few shots on target, quite a few opportunities close to goal, and maybe they score a couple.
Yeah, the key, if Sunderland are to survive this onslaught, are those two center backs. It's O'Neill and Ballard, and they had very good backline strength in the championship last year. I think they both averaged something like 65 to 70% of their duels won. But yeah, there is a very big quality gap between playing random, people in the championship compared to Jared Bowen, right? So personally, I'm going to be a little bit optimistic about the Sunderland defense because I think that I think that they're just matched up well tactically against this West Ham squad, and I think with the continuity that they have had in that back line, I think there's a chance that they'll be better suited. And by the way, they're playing at home. I think they're going to be pretty well suited to just sit back and trust each other and be instinctual. And I think that's just also a very big factor in your ability to defend against strong attacking teams.
Yeah, okay. Now with West Ham, they're under, I'd say, a more pragmatic setup. They'll probably sit in a pretty compact 4-3-3, maybe a 4-2-3-1. They will have discipline in the mid block, and they'll just be looking to spring forward a player like Bowen in transition. Again, transition's definitely important for both of these players. Without like a fully reliable number 9, a lot of their attacks are going to come from those wide to central movements with crosses aimed at late arriving midfielders, or again Bowen or Wilson. They'll try to draw out Sunderland's midfield and exploit the gaps in between the lines, especially if you can stretch out Sunderland's double pivot. The set pieces could be big here. I think West Ham, they do still carry some aerial threats from their center backs, but they're going to need the open play creativity as well. I don't think set pieces are going to save them. Maybe they get one goal out of that, but again, they will need to be patient, and then when the time is right, they've got to spring forward and try to get a good shot off quickly.
Yeah. I think the aerial threat is going to be a factor for the way West Ham play, but I still think that if, like, with all due respect, if you're relying on Aaron Wan fucking Bissaka and set pieces to score against a newly promoted side,
You're
you're
getting
in a
relegated.
world of trouble.
You're
Getting
getting
relegated, dude. Like,
I'm
we're
sorry to
basically
tell you.
saying, we're sitting here right now and talking about how West Ham might get relegated, implicitly. So, man, I don't know, man. I think this is a more evenly matched game than I think a lot of people are expecting. I'm not gonna say my result yet. I'm gonna let you do that first. But yeah, like you said, it's gonna be an interesting one, and I would have watched this if there wasn't Brighton Fulham at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, the Stadium of Light crowd is going to give Sunderland a huge lift, but this is exactly the sort of match with a team coming out of the championship going into the Prem for the first time in a long time, where a lack of cohesion in a new squad can show. I mean, Shaka's presence is going to steady them, but you can't ignore West Ham's experience as well in grinding out points against newly promoted sides. I expect Sunderland to start off pretty brightly, feed off that early atmosphere, nick an opener, maybe even score a second before halftime. But over 90 minutes, West Ham definitely have enough to claw it back. And I think this one is going to end with even honors. I'm going to say a 2-2 to end off this game.
Wow, a 2-2. You know, I thought I was buying a bit too much into the Sunderland hype, but I actually agree with you. At least in the result, I think that O'Neill and Ballard, like I said before, have solid backline strength, and I think that West Ham's offense last year was mediocre at best. It was just Jared Bowen carrying scrubs. They have pieces like Wan-Bissaka, obviously, that can defend, but I just feel like they're going to underestimate how fast and deadly Sunderland can be on the counter. Again, they have two of the fastest wingers in the Premier League coming into this season, so we might be complete fools of ourselves. But my prediction, like yours, is that in the Stadium of Light, the strength of their fans cheering them in a Premier League match for the first time in a decade, Sunderland will pull off a 1-1 draw.
Okay, fair enough. Different scores, but same margins. So I guess if it is a draw, we'll
Man, we're
both
agreeing
get
too much, man. I
2
thought I was
points
going to
at
throw you
minimum.
off with this prediction. I don't know what happened. God damn.
I think draw is actually like if you look at the I don't know whatever Google's got or whatever the gambling sites have got, it is a decently high percentage chance.
It is a decently high percentage chance, but it's still like the lowest one of the three. At least the point
That's
is still
that's
the
true. Yeah. I don't know. There's just so many questions in the attack for these two teams, and especially with their transfer windows and having new players coming on pretty recently. It's hard to say. I feel like a draw is a pretty safe prediction. Means I get 2 points minimum if it works out, so why not? Yeah. Anyway, then we have Wolves next, who are hosting Manchester City at Molyneux.
All right. After a disappointing trophyless season for Pep Guardiola last year, Manchester City went big on transfers this year with players like Cherki, Reindeers, and even Wolves' own Ryan Aït-Nouri to get domestic and European glory. Will Pep get City the start they're looking for, or will this new side, with just one friendly to their name, by the way, struggle to get back into peak form away at the Molyneux?
Yeah, for Wolves, this season is going to feel like a survival scrap. I mean, you've lost Aït-Nouri, but also you've lost Cunha, who was not just their top scorer, he was central to almost half their goals. And the drop off in production when he wasn't there last season was pretty staggering. And yeah, you do have that sale of Ryan Aït-Nouri to City, and now Wolves have lost a lot of their pace and width in transition, which was the heart of their counter-attacking game. Now, they do have some good players in order to try and patch up that hole, with Fer Lopez, Strand Larson, John Arias, but none of them quite replace that directness and quality that Cunha had in the final third. Now, I had Wolves going down in 18th place this season. I know you disagreed with me quite a bit. You had them 3 or 4 places further up. But
I still said they'll be in the relegation battle.
they will certainly be fighting not to go down.
Right.
And while it's certainly possible they don't sink that low into the relegation places, I think those big losses in the front line will cause them some real issues, and we're going to see it right away in this game.
Well, luckily for Wolves, they do have a little bit of relief in that Rodri just picked up another knock. Foden won't be playing in this match, and with Savino potentially poised for an exit, we could see a backup in the right wing position for Manchester City as well. We already know how City is going to line up because we watched them in the Club World Cup, and because they made those transfers so early that we were able to see all of those new guys play for them in that system. They're going to push up their fullbacks in Aït-Nouri and Nunez, and I expect that Reindeers and Gundogan, who I expect to, by the way, be the replacement for Rodri, to take turns pushing up in the midfield as well. Again, it's the standard stuff, basically what they were doing in the Club World Cup. They'll spend a sizable amount of time, I think, in the final third, or in Wolves' final third, I should say. But without Rodri's presence as a playmaking anchor, and without Foden as a reliable progressor and distributor, City might not get as many central opportunities as they would like. Especially with, and I know Wolves have lost pieces, but they still have some solid defensive options in Andre, Joao Gomez, and Emmanuel Aguado.
Yeah, I mean, Man City, they're gonna have some issues in the midfield. Rodri's gone, Kovacic is gone, Foden's gone. Uh, but it's a match
And
I'm
Jack
sure
Grealish
that.
is off to Everton. Woo, anyways. I'm not an Everton
What
fan,
an
but this is
amazing loan, by the way. I'll
yeah,
just say,
incredible loan.
what an amazing loan. But yeah, it's an important match for City too because this is their first season post De Bruyne, post Kyle Walker. It is a new era for this roster. And though they've had those losses in the midfield, there is still lots of quality here. And it's a team that, though they're in transition, they've done pretty well for themselves in the offseason. Uh, I looked at their friendly against Palermo just a couple days ago. Cherky was doing some great chance creation in the first half. Reinders scored two, and he could have bagged more, and will likely have Eight Nori slotting in on the left now against his old club. That defensive spine of Guardiola Diaz remains pretty strong, and of course, you've still got Holland up front, now alongside Marmoush as well. And it's possible that Pep will use this match as a chance to do some early season experimentation, and with a lot of those midfielders gone, he is kind of going to have to. But as long as he doesn't go too far, City's quality and depth can carry them through this matchup. So I think, yeah, it'll just be like, does Pep make the same kind of mistakes he made in the FA Cup against Palace, where he had a wildly different strategy and it really cost him? Or will he play it safe? And if so, there's a pretty good chance City take him.
Yeah, just stick to the basics, play the system you've been playing all season, quote unquote, I guess, with the Club World Cup and the singular friendly. But anyhow, I think, yeah, you're going to push up the fullbacks, and I think that's actually a pretty interesting place where you can take an advantage. Because, I mean, they signed Ryan Nori from Wolves. He is a progressive wingback, and so if he pushes forward with the support of Doku, I mean, they already know that they're going to be facing a pretty high line, and they're going to be having plenty of opportunities on that left side. I think, ironically, Eight Nori might be the key to the match for Manchester City. He'll be a byline wingback, and with his presence and security, it will help isolate Jeremy Doku into central 1v1s against Rodrigo Gomez. Which, I've said this a few times before, but with other players, but man, I'm taking Jeremy Doku 100% of the time in that matchup. That's a weak spot in Wolves' defense, and with how good Doku was at dribbling past defenders in more central areas last season, he could be key in breaking through the Wolverhampton backline if they aren't able to do it centrally.
Yeah, I mean, without Cunha or Eight Nori, again, Wolves' transitions will be slower, less direct. They'll probably target Larson as a bit of a focal point, holding up play for Arias or Lopez to join in as well. Um, Again, like unfortunately for them, they're kind of in a situation like West Ham, where the offensive threat isn't great, and they might need to seriously consider set pieces as one of their best chances to score. City has some pretty good height. Well, okay, the height advantage actually isn't overwhelming on that team, so that set pieces could work out for them. But again, like it's such a strong roster with City, such a strong transfer window. Like I'm sure they're going to dominate possession. You have Reinders controlling those central channels. Unfortunately, no Rodri, but I'm sure they'll manage. Eight Nori's overlap from left back is going to stretch Wolves' block, and you'll have Cherky operating between the lines as well. And defensively, City's press can probably trap Wolves pretty deep, force them to clear balls long, and with like Stones or Guardiola sweeping up, second balls will fall to City's midfielders in order to restart that attack quickly. And again, they're gonna have the possession, they're gonna have the chances, and unfortunately, I'm not sure it's up to Wolves to decide how this match is gonna go.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Especially, by the way, now that Cunha is gone, on Jorgen Strand Larson being the key to the game if Wolves want to try to find a way to score a goal against this Man City squad. Luckily for them, they actually have a very solid long passer in Andre in that midfield, and I think if he can get it directly up to that target man in Larson, Larson is a good anchor. I think he'll be able to help players on the wings, especially John Arias, who, may I add, flourished under similar levels of chaos back in Brazil. If he can cut inside and take advantage of the high line that Pep demands from his fullbacks, we could see Wolves actually get some pretty decent looks off of the counter.
Yeah, no, that's fair, and I think they will have some scoring opportunities for sure. But Wolves, they're going to start this game in damage control mode. They will try to stay compact, frustrate City for as long as possible, but they're not going to have enough bite to be a big threat on the other end. City's midfield rotations will eventually pull Wolves apart, and with Holland up top, chances are bound to come, and they will be taken advantage of. I think it'll actually go quite similarly to that friendly against Palermo. There will be a late first half goal, probably from Holland, and another two in the second half, maybe with Reinders or Cherky stepping up, or of course you could have Marmoush scoring as well. I think this is a game where City will steadily turn the screw rather than blowing the doors off real early. But I can see Wolves sliding in a goal somewhere along the line. Maybe a consolation prize at the end from, I don't know, someone like Strand Larson. So for my final score, I'll say City get most of the chances, they score 3, and Wolves will have 1 to finish off the game.
I think I'm on a similar wavelength with you, but I think I'm just a little bit more bullish on Wolves' defensive capabilities. City will have the possession, probably much more than 50%, possibly even a majority of the game will be in the Wolves' final third. But again, I feel that without Phil Foden, without Rodri there, and with Savinho missing as well, I think that Wolves will be able to at least be relatively solid on the defense. And like I said earlier, I think if Strand Larson just gets a few chances, him and John Arias are chaos agents, and I think they won't need a lot of chances to get a goal in themselves. So I'm going to agree with you with a Man City win, as well as Wolves scoring, but I'll be a bit more conservative and say that City win this one 2-1.
Okay, yeah, not unreasonable. And with that said, we can move on then to Chelsea versus Palace at Stamford Bridge.
I think two of the most exciting teams in the Premier League right now. Chelsea's season went off to a great start with the Club World Cup title, and with key signings like Jamie Gittins, Joao Pedro, and Steve Yao strengthening their roster, it seems like they're finally ready to take that next step forward and truly contend for the Premier League title. But on their way are Crystal Palace, the ultimate giant killers, a squad that took down the likes of Aston Villa, Man City, and Liverpool. Will Chelsea rise up to the occasion, or are they just next on the chopping block?
Interesting. I mean, yeah, Chelsea, they're coming in riding high after a trophy-filled end to last season. To be fair, Crystal Palace has won quite a bit as well. With Chelsea, they've got the Conference League, then the Club World Cup, and I think most importantly, they have a clear tactical identity under Maresca that has been missing for quite a while. You have Pedro's arrival for Brighton, which has added that much-needed link-up presence up front, which has turned Chelsea's attack from a bit static to fluid and rotational. And with Palmer, Fernandes, Caicedo controlling the midfield and the pressing system finally sharp and structured, Chelsea, they look like they're in a good place to build on that fourth place finish. And like the other teams at the top of the table, Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, they had a very strong transfer window. And of course, quite a bit of that has come after the Club World Cup ended. So we haven't seen as much from them. But this will be a pretty interesting match to watch for sure. And see how a lot of these new transfers come together for them.
Yeah, fair enough. I think it should also be noted that Palace will be playing without Daichi Kamada, and while they do have solid backup options there in Will Hughes, I think that they will feel that defensively in losing that number 8 star player for them. So I agree with you. I think Chelsea are going to dominate in the midfield, and we know how they're going to set up. Like City, they've played in the Club World Cup already. They're going to have the 3-2-5 system. Reece James is going to push up. Enzo Fernandez and especially Moises Caicedo will be those anchors for them in the midfield, and I think that with Palace having a slightly, not too much, but slightly weakened defensive midfield, I think it will help them generate chances. And, like, again, Palace, like I said earlier, they had a very solid defensive performance throughout the FA Cup and in this match in the Community Shield. I honestly, maybe you'll disagree with me here, but you can tell me if you do. I don't think they did anything wrong in either of those 2 goals that Liverpool scored. They maintained their defensive solidity. It's not like they made a silly foul or misposition any of the defenders. There's something that's nothing you can do. And I think that's sort of what applies to Chelsea as well. Players like Jamie Gittins, if he's able to cut inside, what can you do? If Palmer and Pedro link up. What can you do, right? Like, I think there's a certain level to which it's just not in Palace's control. And yeah, I think Chelsea might just be able to get goals out of nowhere, no matter what happens. And even like beyond that, last season we talked a lot about how Chelsea. It seemed like at times it was the strikers just playing individually rather than playing cohesively. But under Maresca, recently with these new transfers, that has certainly changed as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like that Frimpong goal from the Shield, it's like really not much you can do about that, right? But Palace, yeah, they're defensively
Yeah,
they've been
that's divine intervention right there, man. I don't even know.
Palace have been pretty strong, man. You're right. I can't really blame them for either of those goals. It was just like stroke of art. I don't know, or stroke of luck, you could say as well. Like you said, it's probably a blessing from God. But as for Palace, they have had a summer of ups and downs. I mean, you had that surprise Community Shield win, which shows they can punch above their weight. And Oliver Glasner's high intensity, high line style is rarely improving the squad's mentality. But the potentially looming departures of some key players like Mark Gahey, who Liverpool is still chasing, plus the UEFA ban, which has just forced them into the Conference League instead of the Europa, it could affect the morale and the squad focus a bit. Palace, they are a very, very threatening team. I've seen that firsthand. We lost to them, so like I'm not gonna doubt them that they can definitely win against a team like Chelsea. But I feel like there's a bit of a fog around them. They might struggle to consistently bring that threat to big teams, and we saw them do some great work against Liverpool, but like we said before, they were a very good counter to Liverpool. And so we'll have to see how they can change up their tactics here in order to face this new team.
Yeah, I think that is very important to mention the fact that Palace just happens to match up very well tactically against Liverpool, and that same thing is not going to apply against Chelsea. To illustrate what I'm talking about, by the way, I sent a few pictures into the group chat. You can pull them on screen right now. They're essentially the midfield lead-ups to both of Palace's goals in the Community Shield against Liverpool. What you'll notice in both games is that because Liverpool pushed Wirtz up and push uh, Connor Bradley, or not Connor Bradley, what's his name? Uh, Help me out here. The guy that's replacing Gravenberch.
Replacing
Uh,
Grav?
Curtis Jones. Sorry, Curtis Jones. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. My bad. It's really the Silva slide. That's the one guy in the midfield. In Palace's first goal, they have their two central midfielders in a world of space because of that issue in transition, and it allows them to make that pass forward to Matata, which eventually leads to the first goal. And in that second case, Liverpool start with the ball, but because Soboslai is the only midfielder there, Palace just push him with four players, and there's just nothing he can do, and he makes a forced error. So, comparatively with Chelsea, they play a double pivot. You know that Enzo Fernandez and especially Moises Caicedo will be there at all times, and that numerical advantage will just not exist for Palace. So that's not to say that they won't be able to create chances. Obviously, they have very solid players in Will Hughes and oh my god, I'm brain farting again. Uh, fuck. Oh my god. Whatever. It is what it is. Anyways, they're gonna have chances. They have solid distributors, and because Eze and Sar will be willing to drop back to the midfield, I think they will be able to have overloads of their own and help out there as well. The most interesting part of this, though, tactically speaking, if Crystal Palace were to take advantage of one thing from Chelsea, it's that Reece James likes to push up quite a bit. Because of that, Eze will probably get a lot of one-on-one opportunities, and with Tyreek Mitchell wanting to push up as well, they could potentially create an overload there on the left side and make runs into danger areas.
Yeah.
Adam Wharton! It's fucking Adam Wharton, that's his name. Oh my god. Holy
There
shit.
we go.
As soon as
Okay.
I finished talking, I remember. Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea under Maresca, they will want to dominate possession from the back. I mean, they've got their fullbacks to invert and also overload those central areas. And Pedro is just such a great addition as the connector up top. He can help Chelsea to drag Palace's center backs into some real awkward positions, and that opens up space for like Palmer to exploit between the lines. Enzo and Caicedo, they can control the tempo. Obviously, they're such a great double pivot. So much great work we've seen for them. And they're going to recycle possession quickly in order to keep Palace chasing. This is another matchup where I think there will be a dominant team in terms of possession, and in this case, it will be Chelsea. As for Palace, they will. I'm sure. I think they will mostly stick to Glasner's aggressive high line and counter press, but they'll be need to be more selective here compared to Liverpool to avoid being played through. Eze will drift centrally in order to link with Mateta, while Sarr can provide that vertical threat to catch Chelsea on turnovers. And their best route will be in those quick transitions before Chelsea can reset their defensive shape. But again, most of these chances are going to go to Chelsea, and they've got a lot of attacking prowess here. So I think we'll just have to see if they finish their chances because I'm sure they're going to get quite a lot of them in this game.
We know Eze's quality, and I think once again he's probably going to be the key to Palace if they are to get a victory. Like you're saying, him and Mateta will be able to drop back, help out in the midfield, and start to create opportunities off of the counter. The interesting thing here is Levi Colwill actually is injured for Chelsea. That's their best center back. So it's going to be, I mean, the two center backs whose names I can barely pronounce, fucking Adarabioyo and Shabala, if that's how you say them.
Chalaba.
And so Chalaba, whatever. Oh my
I
god,
think
dude,
so. Yeah.
bro, I swear they have the most star-studded lineup of midfielders and attackers, and it's fucking Adarabioyo as their center back, man. Like, this is the most unbalanced team, and then Robert Sanchez in that. It's the most
Dude,
unbalanced team.
I've gotta applaud Chelsea. You know, like they used to just spend money on quite literally anybody, but no, they found the right players for their team. It's a big improvement for them.
No, that's fair. I just think that the backline needs some strengthening if they want to truly be at the level of the big three in the Prem.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, we did both have them in fourth, right, to finish the
Right,
season.
right.
They're not. I don't think they're gonna break in just yet.
Yeah. But anyways, just real quick, I was just gonna say because of that weakened back line for Chelsea, I think if you're able to break through the left, Sarr will probably get some decent opportunities on goal, and we've seen how deadly he could be with just a few chances. I mean, he scored in the Community Shield; that was a brilliant finish, and he was pretty good throughout last season. So I think Chelsea could be in some trouble, and I think Crystal Palace will get a few chances and potentially score a few goals of their own.
Yeah, I think both teams have definitely got attacking threats. We've seen Crystal Palace; they can score when they need to. Like with that Man City game in the FA Cup, right? They scored once and they held on. But with the Liverpool game, they've shown that like that does not need to be their strategy. They can like definitely stay behind for a little bit and just catch up pretty much. And they can do that even with a big team like Liverpool. But Chelsea, they have the home advantage and I think a more settled style that should allow them to again control possession, control the game's tempo for the most part. Their structured press will likely disrupt a lot of Palace's attempts to build momentum. And Palace, they showed fight in the Shield, and their young attackers can definitely cause problems on the break as well. But I think the uncertainty around their squad, we can't say for sure what their roster is going to be. Not likely they're going to have any transfers, but like it's possible some moves happen in that starting 11. It could sap some intensity. I don't know. I expect Chelsea to open the scoring in the first half. Palace will respond late on, but I think Chelsea's tactical discipline and their attacking rotation will earn them the win. And so my final call is going to be Chelsea 2, Palace 1.
Once again, I'm going to have to agree with you, man. Chelsea and Palace are both offensively minded teams. They'll try to take advantage of each other's flanks. And with the quality of attackers they have, I'm expecting both sides to score. However, because of how well Enzo Fernandez and especially Moises Caicedo have shown how good they are at bossing the midfield, I think Chelsea will get just a few more key chances, and I'm backing them to take this one, just like you said, 2-1.
Oh, same scoreline again. Okay, fair enough.
What can I say, man?
Well, it's either, I guess it's 3 points or nothing for us. I don't know. I'm pretty confident in this scoreline, honestly, but like I can also see like Crystal Palace could win this too. Like I wouldn't be surprised by that either necessarily. Yeah, okay, I guess with that then we move on to Nottingham Forest, who are hosting Brentford at the City Ground.
All right, Chris G's favorite club right here. Our podcast.
This is basically CoDaKrew's
club.
club at this
This
point.
is the CoDaKrew club, exactly. So, I mean, Nottingham and Brentford were two notable upper mid-table overperformers last season, but with both teams suffering losses in the transfer window, although one probably has suffered a bit more than the other, many are questioning whether these clubs can repeat their success again. But with the season opener at the City Ground, who will come out on top in this occasion?
Forest. I mean, they were one of last season's big stories. Sat second for a long
I thought you were
stretch.
just gonna be like Forest and answer the
Forest,
question.
my
That's
winner,
it.
right there.
Yeah, Forest.
No,
Exactly.
I mean, they beat Liverpool at the start of the season, sat second for a long time, finished seventh, which is unfortunate, but it was high enough for Europa with Palace's demotion, and for them, it is a big deal getting back to European football. And while balancing domestic and European games is practically a brand new challenge for this team and could cause some depth issues later on, for now, Forest can focus on the league. They've kept a lot of key players, and despite losing Alanga to Newcastle, which I think will make a pretty big difference, they still have a strong core, led by Chris Wood up front, and they look poised to make a solid start at home. And Chris Wood, uh, he's getting pretty old, but I think he's still a pretty prolific striker, and he will get his chances, and I'm sure he'll take some of them well. And Brentford will need to watch out for him, no question.
Yeah, I think obviously like Chris Wood could overperformed his XG by something like 6 or 7 goals last season. That's obviously not sustainable. But I mean, not even smart about it. He's getting up there in age. I think he'll still be very solid this season. But as he gets older, they're gonna transition in Igor Jesus, who I mean we've talked about how good he can be at the Club World Cup while we were covering that tournament. And so I think yeah, Nottingham Forest really have that striker position on lock for the next few years. They've dealt with that pretty well. But as for some injuries, I do want to mention coming into this match, both squads are dealing with injuries in the number 8 position. So Dominguez is out first, and Sagari will replace him, and Janelt for Brentford also out. I think Yarmo Luik will probably be the replacement there. But the other issue for Brentford is that, well, Nottingham are making moves. They signed Dan and Doy to replace Anthony Elanga. They're closing in on a deal for James McAtee from Manchester City as well. Brentford, on the other hand, have lost Kevin Schad, a key piece of their attack, to injury. Meanwhile, the other two guys have left to other clubs, or are about to. So it's going to be pretty tricky for Brentford, dealing with just a completely different front three for this match compared to last season. And with how good Nottingham's backline can be, it's going to be a bit difficult for them to score goals.
Yeah, I mean Brentford, they are in a tough spot this season. They've lost their main attacking weapons in Mbemo, potentially Wissa as well, weakening what was already a pretty limited attack. And without the two of them, if both of them go, they're gonna have real trouble scoring goals throughout this season. Honestly, like no matter who they play, it's gonna be a problem. And while their defensive spine and grit remain, that drop off in offensive quality makes them one of the teams that are like almost certain to be dragged into the relegation fight. I mean, you had them in 18th going down, right? And I think they've got enough grit and organization to stay clear of the drop, personally. But their thin depth means that they really are teetering on the edge. And matches like this against likely mid-table finishers, unfortunate as unfortunate as it is to say that about Forest, our team. Uh,
As
matches
disappointed
like
as Chris
this,
G was with me saying that they were going to finish, I think, 12th.
matches like this against teams that are likely to finish mid-table are going to be crucial to keep Brentford in that lower mid-table and keep them up this season. So they've got to take this opener seriously, get some momentum for themselves.
As for Nottingham, though, I think even though Dominguez is out, they have very solid distributors. Elliot Anderson, I think, is one of the most underrated midfielders in the Prem. I think I said this to you after we recorded the Premier League video. By the way, I think he's been solid all around as a distributor. And Morgan Gibbs White, the number 10, who luckily at least they've been able to keep him. He averaged 1.5 key passes per game last season, and so they're going to overload the center. They're going to try to make passes in behind, and through runs in behind to Nottingham's wingers, especially Dan and Doy, and with passes potentially to Chris Wood. I mean, even though Brentford, I think, actually have a solid midfield, especially with the addition of Jordan Henderson. Again, like, Chris Wood does not need that many chances to score a goal. Uh, you know, Dan and Doy does not need that many runs in behind to get a successful dribble and create a key chance opportunity for Nottingham. So I just think that they're set up very well for this matchup. Especially because I mean, and Dan and Doy in particular is going to be very interesting. He's obviously the natural replacement for Anthony Elanga. They have similar profiles. I think he's been pretty solid in preseason so far. And this is going to be a super favorable matchup for him because with Kevin Schade injured, their Brentford's left back, Lewis Potter, is probably going to be pushed up to the left wing position, and instead they're going to be playing Rico Henry, their backup, as their left back. And I'm going to be honest with you, I do not rate Rico Henry very highly at all. Again, I feel like I just say the same carbon copy sentence like 5 times this episode already, but Dan and Doi on a 1v1 vs Rico Henry, I'm taking Dan and Doi 100% of the time. So I think, yeah, that's going to be big. And then Ola Aina, by the way, a progressive right back that likes to push up the pitch, that's going to give Dan and Doi even more space, and it'll allow him to be even more aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, Brentford, I think they'll just have to prioritize defensive solidity in order to try and compensate for their weakened attack after losing Wemo, potentially losing Wissa as well, though maybe not for this match just yet. But even then, the matchups are not great for them. Like you said, Ndoye versus Henry. Or if you look at the attack, I mean, Forest have Chris Wood. They have Chris Wood, who outperformed his XG by so much last season. And even if he's not going to do as much this season, he will still be a massive threat. And Brentford, they're going to look to frustrate Forest, try and maintain their shape, maintain their discipline, rely on quick counters. But they are going to have a big challenge in limiting space between the lines and also avoiding being stretched by Forest's very energetic players. And unfortunately, it's just not going to work out for them. They don't have the squad this season in order to get that done against a team like Forest.
Yeah, I'm going to be completely honest. Not to jump the gun, but I just don't see Brentford scoring in this match. They're playing Lewis Potter, a left back, and Carvajal, a midfielder, as their 2 wingers. So already, that's 2/3 of their attack playing out of position. You've got Igor Thiago, who is, I mean, I'm not going to say he's bad, but he's unproven in the Premier League, mostly speaking. We'll see how good he does. They obviously have Damsgaard, they held on to him, and they have Hendo, who can provide midfield stability and potentially give key chances. But I think with Sangare and Anderson as very good defensive midfielders that Nottingham have, it's going to blunt some of that as well. But again, even if they do get balls in behind Igor Thiago, I said this at the beginning, Nottingham has one of the best center-back duos in the Premier League with Murillo and Milinkovic. And given Thiago's relative inconsistency, I would not trust him to put a goal past Forest's back line, especially if he doesn't get a ton of chances.
Yeah, I mean, Nottingham, they will aim to control the midfield, and I'm sure they'll do it well. They'll have a 4-3-3 shape. You've got Chris Wood as a target man to hold up play, bring runners like Gibbs-White into dangerous positions. You have that midfield trio, Gibbs-White, Anderson, I think Yates there as well, who can recycle possession quickly, maintain the tempo, and you've got the fullbacks pushing up to support wide attacks, create overloads. I think Forest will be very disciplined in their press, and they will be able to force a lot of turnovers in dangerous areas from Brentford's midfield. And I don't know, their home advantage, along with their attacking talent and just, I think, a genuinely, generally higher quality squad, give them the edge here. Brentford's depleted offense is going to struggle to create many chances. Forest can control the possession. I expect them to find their rhythm early, and they will just grow more dominant as the match progresses. Brentford will be forced onto the back foot, and like you said, I don't think they're going to score. I'm going to have a confident first half goal through Wood from Forest. Then they double their lead in the second half, and they finish it off 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, I think Nottingham are set up for success in this match, with key playmakers like Gibbs-White, Anderson, and potentially James McAtee, if he does get his deal confirmed in time, and if he does get some second half minutes, there will be no shortage of chances. There will be no shortage of key playmakers. And with their wingers in Ndoye and Hudson-Odoi, who are also very strong, in that position, to go at Brentford's weak fullbacks, they'll have tons of areas of attack. With Brentford's entire front 3 from last year either injured or leaving, I don't think they'll be able to strike back, and I'm pretty confident, agreeing with you, for a comfortable 2-0 win to Nottingham Forest. Chris G, we disappointed you last time. I hope we redeemed ourselves with this 2-0 prediction that we both agree.
Yeah, start the season off strong, and of course we had Forest pretty low in the table, but we will hope that they get much further up.
Bro, we had the mid-table, and we did not.
It wasn't the worst, I guess.
Dude,
yeah.
I've seen other people put them 14th, 15th, man. We're not that. This is not that unreasonable. I feel
right. I mean, we had that divide in our table, right? Was it between 12th and 13th?
We said there was a big quality gap between the top 12 and 13th and everyone below. And Tottenham and Nottingham are on the right side of
Yeah,
that divide.
Forest do not deserve that disrespect to get put below that line. No, they're a good team. They'll do pretty well for themselves this season, I'm sure. I guess that brings us to probably the headline match. Well, I think it is the headline matchup of this week. We have
Definitely
Man
the headline
U
match.
hosting Arsenal at the fabled Old Trafford.
Yeah, the match that our viewers have patiently waited an hour 30 minutes for. With the marquee signing of Victor Gyökeres, Arsenal this year is going all in on the Premier League. To do so, winning matches like these against other giants is a necessity. But with United's active window of their own, replacing their entire front three, getting a win away at Old Trafford might not be so simple.
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal, they're coming off of three consecutive second place finishes. Let me emphasize that three. And so they have revamped their squad to really push for trophies and
Actually,
particularly
number one
for the
hater right
league
here,
win.
bro. This guy is such a hater. It's crazy.
Gyökeres finally gives them a proper number 9 with mobility and finishing, which opens space for players like Saka and Odegaard as well. And you have that midfield overhaul, Subamendi, Norgard, and you've still got Rice, which adds bite and pressing intensity, and it's all like a clear upgrade from last season. They've added directness on the wings as well, and they've really solved their creative staleness issues, and particularly their issue with finishing because they didn't have a striker for the longest time. Now they've got Gyökeres, who looks very promising. And yeah, Arteta's squad depth now allows rotation in all competitions. But like you said, they're definitely going to be focusing on the Prem. The pressure is high, though, because they need to win trophies this season or risk another almost.
Yeah, and I think to be fair to United, I mean they've also had a very smart transfer window. Replaced their entire front three with players that fit Amarin's 3-4-3 system much better. But I think the biggest issue I have with this squad right now is the central midfielders. Like, I think Palace are a good blueprint for if you want to play this way. Those central midfielders, not to say that they can't contribute to the offense, but they have to be defensively solid. Bruno Fernandes is going to be one of them. He is their best player, and to drop him would be unthinkable. But if he's not the defensive guy, the other man has to be. Uh, their options right now seem to be either Manuel or Ugarte or Kobe Menu, but neither of those players really fit the bill either. And that's why obviously they're going for Carlos Baleba. But even if they get him, he probably won't be ready in time for this match. And so I think without a true number 8, Arteta is probably going to take full advantage of that fact. Arsenal, for what it's worth, they thrive on triangle offense, with Zubimendi just making that even more pungent. So he's going to be making passes to Rice and Odegaard, and they're all going to be playing off each other. And if, because of that weak point in United's midfield, Rice and Odegaard get a lot of time with the ball to make passes, they're going to do link-up play with the wingers, and they're just going to create a lot of chances for Arsenal and a lot of chances to put balls in behind to their star striker in Victor Gyökeres.
Yeah, I mean it's looking pretty promising for Arsenal. And then with Man U, you have a squad that looks promising on paper, but under Amorim, it's still kind of a tactical mystery. I mean, his system, I said it in our table video, it might get him sacked, but like it's gonna take time to implement, and they're gonna have some growing pains. United, they don't have the ideal player profiles across the board to slot in smoothly yet. Attack wise, it's pretty unsettled. Sancho is back, but obviously he hasn't hit his stride. Rashford's out on loan, and the likes of Garnacho and Anthony raise questions about consistent goal threats. It isn't helping their case that they haven't beat Arsenal in the league since the fall of 2022. Though to be fair, they did have that FA Cup win, but that was also on penalties, so that's another thing entirely. So there are issues going back to the start of Ten Hag's era, and there's a lot of problems for Amorim to try and fix. And unfortunately for the Red Devils, this is shaping up to be another pretty turbulent season with plenty of issues to come.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I think I'm with you here. United are probably going to have quite a few issues. I think another thing when you push up so much, by the way, when you play this system, is that you need to have good wingbacks that can help defend. Again, Palace being my example here, Tariq Mitchell and Daniel Munoz, while they're very offensively helpful, they're also very good defensively. Patrick Dorgo and Amad Diallo have the offense part down, but they do not fit the bill on being one-on-one defenders against wingers. And with what Miles Lewis-Skelly and Saka could offer, they could potentially cook this match, cutting inside for shots and making key passes. I think United's defense is going to be a key issue, and I think they could leak a lot of goals. And their best bet is probably to just score more than Arsenal, than they concede to Arsenal. Luckily for them, I think their offense is actually set up well to counter Arsenal. Because their midfield is so offensively focused, we'll see Dorgo and Diallo push up to pressure Arsenal's high-pushing fullbacks, especially Miles Lewis-Skelly. And with Zubimendi likely needing to drop back to deal with that lack of wing-back presence in transition, basically the same thing that Liverpool have to deal with, we could potentially see a lot of space for Manuel Ugarte and Bruno Fernandes to have time, make dribbles in behind in the half spaces, and make passes in behind to that very strong front three.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at these two teams, I feel like Man U are kind of facing the issue that Arsenal was facing for the longest time, which is they are lacking a reliable number 9.
They have three people that could potentially be that.
Right, yeah. But, like, who are you actually going to put in there? I don't think there's, like, a clear candidate for the
Sheshko, no?
striker position. Oh, well, okay, actually, you know what? No, that's fair. That's fair.
Bro, are you...
But,
okay.
I'm stupid. But has he played a match, though?
I think he played in a friendly.
Okay. That's interesting. Alright. Because if he's played a match, that's fair, but, like, chemistry is still kind of questionable. So, like, obviously he'll take that position, but we'll have to see how he actually plays there. They've spent a little while without really having a forward, and they've been relying more on wide players, like Garnacho, for example, to create the chances. We'll have to see how they adapt, then, to having an actual striker. Casemiro's presence can help shield the backline, but his mobility is quickly declining, and it is going to leave vulnerabilities in transition that Arsenal can definitely exploit. And yeah, Amorim, he's got his system. Like, it looks promising, but like I said before, the squad's current profile just makes it hard to execute consistently. And to be fair, they do have some new transfers, but it's just going to be yet more work for Ruben to try and slot them into the squad properly. And we'll just have to see how it goes for them if they have the chemistry to beat a team like Arsenal.
Yeah, real quick, by the way, I just did check again, and yeah, actually, Sheshko has not played for United yet, even in any friendlies.
Yeah, so
okay, right.
like, I'm sure he'll do well for himself, but it's like, you've got to think about the other 10
There's
players as well,
time,
right? So, yeah.
Yeah. I think that, yeah, I mean, whenever you're changing the entire front three, there's always going to be an adjustment period. I think, like, they could potentially have the issue that Chelsea had last season, which is they have good quality strikers, like, or good quality attackers overall. No one's denying that. But do they have the chemistry to play together right away? Maybe not. And so that's gonna be a really interesting dynamic. I still think though, because Dorgu and especially Diallo will be able to provide crosses into them, will be able to cut in, and because they'll have attacking players like Bruno Fernandes, I actually do expect them to score a few goals. Like, it's gonna be a lot of pressure you're putting on Gabriel, Saliba, and Zubimendi. Especially Zubimendi, I think he's very solid, but he's untested in the Premier League, at least in competitive matches, in a position like this. And it's going to be really interesting to see how he goes. And just like Sheshko, Mbeumo and Cunha are sort of untested, at least in professional matches, I think you could see that same issue for Zubimendi to an extent on the defense.
Yeah, Man U, they can definitely pose a scoring threat. But you have Arsenal here. They've got a well-oiled, high-intensity system. Balanced midfield. Like, all around, they're pretty good. You have Gyökeres, who has played games, so they've got some more chemistry there. And he is very mobile. He's able to pull defenders out of position, create space for creative attackers like Odegaard and Saka. You have Madueke on the wings, who can provide some pace and directness. And the backline can stay compact and disciplined. Arteta's side, they excel at controlling tempo, and I'm sure they'll do it here, and they can exploit spaces between the lines as well. They will be able to wear down Man United throughout this match with relentless pressing, quick vertical transitions, and yeah, like you said, Man U's aim here, I think, is to just score more than Arsenal. But Arsenal have got their attacking threats too, so it's going to be a tough job for them. They have their work laid out.
Yeah, I think both sides are going to really just rely on the wings. Not only, but like the wings will be a big part of it. How will if Miles Lewis Skelly is pushed up so high, how will he deal with the threat of Amad Diallo? If Amad Diallo is pushed so high, how will he deal with Lewis Skelly, and how will he deal with Martinelli? I think honestly, if anything, Saka might be a little bit more manageable just because with this new system, I think he's a little bit more isolated, and with Ben White comparatively having to push back a lot more, being a lot more conservative, there's going to be a lot more isolation for Saka. Not necessarily like near the box where he wants to be 1v1 driving against a fullback, but maybe closer to the center of the pitch, where I guess more far down the pitch, I should rather say, and that could potentially cause him to be a little bit less effective than they would like. I think if you put in Jury and Timber there as the starting right back inside, I think that does solve the issue. But it seems like they're going to start Ben White for now, so that's going to be an interesting dynamic as well.
Yeah, I mean, this matchup, it just feels like a clash of two teams at different stages. I mean, United are still finding their identity under Emery, and Arsenal, they have solved many of their issues with their roster, and now they're pushing for tangible success with a pretty settled core. United's attack is unsettled, and they might struggle to break down Arsenal's organized defense without the right chemistry, especially without Rashford's pace being there as well. And Arsenal's midfield control and attacking creativity will allow them to create some quality chances for themselves. I think they'll get most of the possession too, maybe not as dominant with some of these as with some of these other matches. And United's hunger to prove themselves, especially to their home fans at Old Trafford, will help their momentum. But still, I think Arsenal's more cohesive squad will give them the edge. And so my final call will be Man U 1, Arsenal 2.
With volatility on both wings as well as central imbalances, I'm expecting a lot of goals. I think even more than you are. Saka and Odegaard will be key in setting up 1v1s and progressing the ball with Gyökeres. And I think neither United's back line nor their midfielders are really well equipped to deal with this. But that central overload that United's front three will provide, as well as the spark that I think Bruno Fernandes is going to bring, I think United will get some goals of their own. So my prediction is going to be more wild than yours. I'm going with a 5-goal banger and Arsenal to ultimately come out on top with a 3-2 win.
3-2. Okay.
I mean,
so
I can't have all my wins be 2-1. Like, come on.
outcome the
I'll have
same,
some
margin
there.
the same, but okay, 3-2. Interesting. Yeah, well, that would be probably the highlight of the match week if it was to happen.
Yeah. Well, I think coming into the week, it seems like it will be the highlight of the week. So
Right,
I'm just
for
just
sure.
staying on brand here, really.
Yeah, this is a match where like this will be very telling for how these two teams are going to play. Some pretty monumental transfer windows, both getting strikers to fill that number 9 role. And we'll just have to see how they play if they have the right chemistry to get things done this season. And I guess that brings us to our final match. We've got Monday night's fixture at Elland Road with Leeds United hosting Everton.
All right. Well, we both said that Leeds was the newly promoted club with the highest chance of survival, and this match will be a great opportunity to test that fury. At Elland Road against the mid-table side in Everton, if Leeds wants to stay out of relegation this year, this is the kind of match that they cannot afford to lose.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Leeds, they're still kind of a club in transition after getting relegated in 22-23, but there is reason for optimism. They had a pretty good preseason with draws against Man U, Villarreal, and AC Milan. And while some defensive vulnerabilities and concerns around goal scoring linger, Leeds, they will be eager to kickstart their Premier League survival push with a strong home performance. I saw a stat from a BBC article showing how quickly promoted teams tend to gather up points at the start of the season, and teams with 11 or more points after the 10th match day have a 100% survival rate. Even for a championship champion like Leeds, in the Prem, early momentum is going to mean everything. And this is the kind of match that they're going to want to target to get the points that they need to stay up this season.
I mean, I don't know if that 11 thing is going to ring true for Leeds again, but I do think they have a pretty, at least generally speaking, like more um easier, I guess, running the first few games. Like in their first six, they have, besides Everton, they have Fulham, Wolves, and Bournemouth. So, and they could potentially get quite a few points off of there if they play their cards right. And yeah, I think that stat does seem to sit with my reasoning of thinking that they are probably the team with the highest chance of being promoted. But I think for this match specifically, there are a few worries that I have. One, Jacob Bajul, one of their starting center backs, is suspended with a red card for this match, and I've seen that Lucas Perry, their starting goalkeeper, got a bit of a knock. He will most likely be back, but there's also a bit of a question mark around there as well. And I think against just like a solid mid-table team like Everton, defensive solidity is very important. So I think I'm a little bit worried with how Leeds are going to deal with Everton's offensive threat coming into this match, especially because, by the way, Everton, not only were they solid last year, but they've made two key offensive signings in Dewsbury Hall and the loan of Jack Grealish.
Yeah, no, very, very interesting window for Everton. And they are certainly a tough side to beat. They were pretty tough to beat under Sean Dyche, though he struggled a bit towards the end of his tenure. But now they've got Moyes, whose disciplined physical style has proven very hard to break down. They frustrate top teams, and they consistently pick up points against the lower sides as well. However, their preseason has shown some struggles, with them managing just 1 point in the Premier League Summer Series, however seriously you take that tournament. Leeds have not beaten Everton in 5 years, with their last win in November of 2020 actually being at Goodison Park, not Elland Road. But with Everton looking a bit questionable at the moment form-wise, they will need to be careful in order to hold up that record against Leeds that they've got going.
That's fair, but I'd say friendlies are friendlies. And if we're looking at not Arsenal, if we're looking at Everton's form late into last season with David Moyes, I think they were actually quite solid, and there's something good to build off there. Uh, Looking into this match, though, strong distributors like Dewsbury Hall and Alcaraz are going to distribute to wingers and put balls over the top for Beto, who, by the way, also had a career revival under David Moyes. And I know Leeds is going to push back their wingers. They're going to move to a 4-5-1 defensively. I think Everton's midfield just has too much quality, and I expect them to overpower Leeds in the center of the pitch, especially if Ethan Apondu happens to be benched, which also seems like it's a potential outcome given that they've signed Longstaff and Anton Stock.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, if you look at Leeds' window, physicality has been a big thing. You have like key players like Jakobiol, Anton Stash, aerial strength in order to manage those crosses, those set pieces, and also they've got a pretty compact shape to try and limit central space. Though, like you said, with some players gone and with Everton being pretty strong in that area, we're gonna have to see how well they do there. Offensively, they're gonna want to exploit width. You've got overlapping fullbacks to support crosses and quick link-up play to forwards like Mecha, Piro. Their pressing is measured. Rather than an all-out high press, they want to try and capitalize on mistakes. But the challenge really is for them is going to remain taking those openings and those opportunities and turning them into goals consistently. Because while they do have some strong players like Piro, who I think scored 17, 18 goals last season, they are moving up. I think he did. Yeah.
See, ball knowledge right there.
Subscribe
they
to the
are podcast for ball knowledge. I'm sorry.
See, Championship. Even if you don't watch Championship, we have you covered for the guys coming up. You know.
Exactly.
Yeah. But even still, like it is from Championship to Prem, right?
I mean, my team's in the Championship. Like, who do you expect? Anyways.
I mean, yeah, you've got a Championship team. I don't though. I have a Prem team, and that's about it.
You've got a champion team. There's a big difference.
Fair enough. Though we lost the Shield, so I don't know. We'll have to see.
Glorified friendly. Who cares?
Fair enough. Everything's a friendly once you lose. It's fine.
Exactly.
Anyways, yeah, with Leeds, like the challenge is just going to remain turning those chances into goals consistently. Because while they've had good goal scorers, this is the Prem we're talking about. It's obviously a level or two even up from the Championship, and we'll have to see how they adapt. Yeah,
I think to touch a little bit more on Everton though, last season obviously they were like a Brexit mid-table squad, like just defensively solid. we're not going to push at you. We're not going to make runs. We're just going to pass the ball around and try to break your defense down. But they have one
Dude,
player that.
that
Oh,
last
sorry, go ahead.
derby at Goodison, man. Yikes. They
Oh
are
yeah.
tough. Seriously. Scary team.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, I have to assume this is Nigel Farage's favorite team in the Premier League. I don't know if he watches football, but if he does, I think it's pretty clear. But I think this year might be a little bit different. Like I said, Iliman Ndiaye was like the sole exception for this rule. He actually tried to run in a bit, and given that they also signed Jack Grealish, it seems to me that they might be intentionally trying to move away from that identity. Not completely, but at least having another avenue of attack so that they can have more diversity and play against a variety of squads. And I think that actually is a very good strategy for Leeds in particular. Because, yes, Adam Asno is a solid progressive fullback, but how good is his defending? Jaden Bogle, same thing, but I think he was one of the weaker players for Leeds last season. So I think the smart move for Everton is to take advantage of Leeds' fullback weakness, and if they're able to do that, I think they'll get quite a few chances in behind for Beto and for just their attacking players in general.
Yeah, I mean, Everton, with Moyes succeeding Sean Dyche, they've still maintained that disciplined, physical approach, designed, like really designed to frustrate opponents. I know I've been saying that for other teams, but Everton is the team designed to get in your head. They protect their defensive shape. They rely on a solid backline and midfielders who can offer grit in the center of the pitch. Offensively, they tend to be pragmatic, looking for those direct opportunities with forwards like Beto. But like you said, with Grealish there, you've got some different avenues in order to score, so that's pretty nice. Their tactical style, it emphasizes resilience, being tough to break down, but they do have some added creativity now, so that's pretty good going forward, especially given their modest preseason form. I think having those additions will help them quite a bit.
I think it's honestly a little interesting that Everton, like we're saying, is like the team that sits back and tries to break down, and tries to not let you break down their defense. It's kind of what Leeds looks at when they look in the mirror in a way. Like that's what Leeds' goal is this season: to sit back defensively, try to not get broken down, and play through the solid. Not even necessarily counterattacking. That's not really the profile they have, but the solid midfield playing and finding gaps. But because Everton play like that, it's going to be kind of difficult for Leeds to find goals. I mean, with the 4-5-1 that they use on the defense, Gnonto and James, or potentially Nmecha if he starts instead. I mean, obviously they have a variety of depth there. Because they're so pushed back on defense, Asno and O'Brien will have a lot of time to recover in transition for Everton. And with their defensive solidity, I think it's going to be tough for Leeds to break through. Obviously, they do have some good long ball distributors, especially in Sean Longstaff. I have questions about their front four ability to convert chances. Brendan Aronson, in particular, for example, had very questionable ball control and first touch abilities in the championship last year. And while maybe it's not too much of an issue at that level, when you're now up against Jared Brownthwaite and James Tarkowski, that shit does not fly. So I think I mean, I don't know. I think Leeds, they have the quality there, but just the way that they're tactically set up against Everton, which is a little bit unfortunate. And just with the quality difference between the backline in the Championship and a backline in the Prem, I think Leeds could be in for a rude awakening.
Yeah, no, this is going to be, well, you can expect a tight physical clash. Both teams will be cautious early on, I think, but they will start to get into the flow, and there will be quite a few chances here, I'm sure. Leeds, they have the backing of home support, the preseason momentum. Everton have got quite a bit of time in the Prem. They've dealt with teams like Leeds before just coming up from the Championship, and they've done pretty well. But this is going to be this will be a very interesting match because I know the bookies or like Google or Ladbrokes or whatever, they've got Leeds with a slight advantage, probably largely for being home and being promoted and having that fan support for the first match. I'm not sure. I get the feeling your prediction will be different from mine, but I'm actually going to go with the Leeds
Good,
win
thank
here.
goodness. We've agreed on every game.
I think we've agreed on the verdict of every match so far, so
Right.
this is like the one difference. I think Leeds, they've built their transfer window around height, physicality. You've got players like Nmecha, Biol, and now Anton Stash. And I think they can grind out a win here. They've got the preseason momentum and the backing of the home support to just about get the job done. It's going to be a very tight match, but I can see a goal from Pirro, who played great for them last season, or maybe from Stash, who just bagged one against Milan a few days ago. Everton will make it, again, very, very difficult. And I could honestly see this match going either way. But I have Leeds staying up, right? And just for that, I feel like I have to give them a win to start off. And I think the slight edge and confidence from the preseason will carry them through. So it's going to be a 1-0 win for me.
Honestly, I just think that there's a massive difference in the defense that the average championship team has compared to Bramthwaite, Tarkowski, and Jordan Pickford.
I agree.
Yeah. So, like, I just think that there's question marks in Leeds midfield and fullback positions that will be exploited by the Drewsbury Halls, the Ndiays, the Jack Grealishes, and just with how good Everton is defensively, and I think with some of the question marks that some of the Leeds attackers have as well, especially Brendan Aronson. Maybe it's just like a Canadian bias against American players, but I feel like he's gonna get cooked. I just don't see how Leeds can win this match. I don't care what the Opta supercomputer says. I don't care what the betting markets say. I'm actually gonna feel a comfortable 2-0 win for Everton.
Yeah, no, this is my vibes pick, kind of like when I had Arsenal third and City second to finish off the table.
But I think a lot of people have Arsenal third and City second, so.
Yeah, no, I just think Leeds has a pretty raucous fan base, and I think they'll get them through here. Also, I was at Wonderland.
I feel like if anything, Sunderland has a more raucous fan base. If we're being.
Little anecdote, I was at Wonderland a week ago. Actually, for anyone who's not from Canada watching this, Wonderland's a theme park we've got just outside Toronto. And I saw a guy with the Leeds jersey, and I said, hey, I did some preseason predictions, and I had you guys staying up. And he's like, yeah, I'm pretty confident we'll stay up as well. And I feel like I've got to do a favor to him. You know how we've got like Chris G, and we have to do Forest well, because otherwise Chris G will be very upset with us. I feel like I've got to give this random guy from the theme park some credit, you know? So, Leeds, I had him staying up for the season, and I think this match will be very crucial to them, so I've just got to stick to my guns and say they win this one.
Dude, look, I'm not above getting bribed by favorable comments, so if Wonderland guy decides to go into the comment section and tell us about how good Leeds is, maybe I'll be a bit more nice to them in my future predictions. But for now, I mean, I think Everton is one of the most underrated teams in the Prem. I really highly rate David Moyes. I'm going to stick to my guns here.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Well, that is, with almost, if not 2 hours of content now, that concludes our predictions for the first match week of the Premier League. This is, I think it is now our longest video yet, and we're going to have to see if the next couple match weeks are this long. We're planning on combining 2 and 3, so we're definitely gonna have to tone it down a little.
No, we're not releasing a 4-hour video.
4 hours for 2 match days.
Oh,
no, we'll try and trim a bit. But for now, for anyone who's stuck around for likely our longest episode yet, thank you for doing so. We hope you learned some new stuff from this match. Again, we'd like to think we have a decent level of ball knowledge. We've watched matches from all of these teams. We've watched like championship matches for any of the teams coming up. And so we hope we've informed you well for this first match week of what could be a very exciting Prem season.
Yeah, I hope if you're able to get past their very un-British accents and still trust us as a source of Premier League knowledge regardless. We hope you've gotten something out of this video. And just out of our videos in general. So, yeah, thank you again for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Send us your firstborn child. Send us your left kidney. And see ya.